So John graduated from Carleton University with an honors degree in economics and began working at StatsCan in 1990. He spent over 18 years working in the business and trade statistics field as a survey and project manager. Over the past 7 years, as the chief in Income Statistics Division, he's been responsible for the Pension and Wealth Program. This includes the Pension Plans in Canada Survey, the Survey of Trusteed Pension Funds, and the Survey of Financial Security. And he is also the chief responsible for the Canadian Income Survey, which I mentioned as well this morning. So John, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me? No? Okay. All right. Thanks. Thank you very much, Heidi. Well, thank you, everybody. First, I'd like to start off by saying a big thanks to the NHRC for inviting us, giving us the opportunity from the Income Statistics Division to actually present on the results of the 2012 Survey of Financial Security. The next note to self, and I'm going to apologize ahead of time if my voice becomes a little crackly or you can't make things out, is from my endless hours of cheering on those Ottawa Red Blacks yesterday, and my apologies if there are any Hamilton fans, but it was a heck of a game. Well, what I'd like to do today is basically describe the wealth program at Statistics Canada. I'd like to go through a few of the objectives of the Survey of Financial Security, describe and demonstrate some of the content that we have in the questionnaire, and then talk a little bit about the process, talk a little bit about the design of the survey, and then basically get to the bread and butter, which are the highlights. I'd like to spend maybe a few slides just giving some overall results of the survey, but then get into some of the aspects which will be of particular interest to us, which are the housing, I guess, cohort. And particularly for us, it's the principal residence, where we see the majority of the home and home ownership data. Okay, so basically in terms of wealth, Statistics Canada first started collecting information on asset and debt data back in 1957. We had a asset and debt module which we included on the Survey of Consumer Finance. The Survey of Consumer Finance was a supplement to the labor force survey at the time. This survey was conducted the module was actually included in the supplement every 7 years. We continued to collect the asset and debt information up until 1984. Then we went through, the budgetary constraints, the time constraints on a labor force survey supplement, and so on, which basically led to the discontinuation of the module on the SCF. That meant going almost 15 years without information on wealth. As a result of the Data Gaps Initiative project, which was part of the Policy Research Data Group initiative back in 1997, 1998, Statistics Canada did receive approval for funding for conducting an actual wealth survey. That was the introduction of the 1999 Survey of Financial Security. Back in 1999, our survey sample was approximately 24,000 dwellings. About 6 years passed, we'd continued to receive funding from the same group. It was, however, again, due to budgetary constraints, reduced. That ended in the reduction in our sample. So the 2005 survey actually went out with about a sample of 9,000 dwellings. So we lost a little bit of the specifics in terms of what we were able to release. We did manage to release national and regional level data. It was unfortunate we couldn't drill down at more disaggregated levels, and we definitely couldn't have that provincial comparability from the 1999 iteration. Then another 6-7 years passed, and we still realized and recognized that wealth is a huge data gap in this country, and Statistics Canada made the decision then to self-fund the third iteration of the survey, basically on the fact that we did have stakeholders and data users that would demonstrate that need. So we took it upon ourselves and we conducted the 2012 survey. The good news was that we managed to get enough funding that we were able to then produce information back at that provincial level. Our sample survey was, or the survey sample was approximately 20,000 dwellings for 2012. Okay, so briefly in terms of the objectives, and I mentioned it, it's really to fill that data gap concerning wealth measurement, the wealth distribution of Canadians and Canadian households. The SFS measures the net worth. It's simple calculation of your assets minus all your debts. And the SFS gives you that ability to be able to identify any major changes in wealth over time. So in terms of content, we have a number of demographic cohorts. We have information on family composition. We have information on age and sex, marital status, education, labor force, types of dwellings, etc. The core, however, is that asset and debt. So we have assets which we measure and collect data for, both on a financial and non-financial aspect. Financial, you're looking at assets such as pension assets, your RSPs, your RIFs, information on tax-free savings accounts. That was something we introduced with the 2012 iteration. You're looking at bank accounts and any other financial assets that are basically held outside of RSPs. In terms of non-financial, a little bit more interesting probably for us today, and that's really the principal residence, the other real estate, included in that could be the vehicles and values, property, contents, valuables, etc. We also collect information on business ownership in the country. In terms of the debts, we're looking at all mortgages. So mortgages on your principal residence, mortgages on your cottages, secondary homes, parcels of land. We're looking at all debts, everything you can think of, from lines of credits to credit card debt to student vehicle loans, even to the money that you may have borrowed from mom and dad or even a friend. We have income information on the survey. The information for our income is basically just taken straight off of personal tax files. The Survey of Financial Security utilizes a concept called informed replacement. When we go out and interview the household respondents, we're basically informing the respondents that our Statistics Canada is going to combine the responses from their survey with those of administrative data, and specifically for our needs, the administrative data source would be your income tax files. We also have a module on behaviors and attitudes. It's a short module, but it's really intended to capture the type of questions that some of our stakeholders have always wanted from a social policy perspective. Do you have a household budget? Have you ever withdrawn money out of your RSPs? If so, what have you withdrawn them for what purpose? Even as simple as, do you view your financial situation, how do you view your financial situation today compared to last year, 2 years ago, and do you think it will get better or do you think it will deteriorate? Now, in terms of the actual survey, we're looking at a personal face-to-face interview. Now, in the 1999 and 2005 iterations, we had our regional office interviewers interview the respondents at their homes. They use basically a paper and pencil interviewing technique. Over the years, we have kind of graduated in technology and moved over to the computer-assisted personal interview. We developed a laptop-based interview, so this time when we went out into people's homes, we had the luxury of having easy systematic flows. We had built-in edits to help with the accuracy, made the survey a heck of a lot quicker. So we were able to reduce the survey time. That was an automatic bonus right from the start. We ended up with almost a 70% response rate for the 2012 survey. The survey actually includes, in terms of sample design, all the 10 provinces across Canada. It does, however, exclude territories, persons living on Aboriginal settlements, unfortunately. But these exclusions typically in a household survey at StatCan usually range between about 1.5% to 2% of the population. So now the fun stuff. We released our data back in February of 2014. We did this through the StatCan Daily. The main highlights at the time were really to talk about the median net worth of Canadian family units. A Canadian family unit is defined as an economic family of 2 or more individuals and unattached individuals. Basically, 2012, the net worth of all Canadian family units was approximately $243,000. Significant jump from 2005 and more so from 1999. Similar to the 1999 and 2005 iterations, the principal residence was still the single largest asset held by Canadian family units in 2012. It represented almost 1/3 of the total asset value in Canada. About seven, and the other interesting note, we mentioned pensions. About 7 in 10 family units had actual one form of a private pension asset. That could be an employer-sponsored pension plan. It could be an RSP. So looking at the asset distribution, as I mentioned, the non-financials are really the key. They've been pretty much the top type of asset, specifically the principal residence and other real estate. The non-financial assets make up almost half of the asset base. Principal residence and other real estate is close to about 90% of that number. And you'll see that the private pension assets are actually growing. They have grown significantly over the last 3 iterations. We like to also present data in terms of the holdings of assets. So this particular graph will demonstrate, in terms of family units, how many of our family units across the country actually hold a particular type of asset. As I mentioned, private pensions, so 70%. You have almost the entire family unit base having some form of financial asset. You definitely have everyone in the country holding some form of non-financial asset. In terms of real estate, and principal residence, then you're looking at about 62.5 or 62% of home ownership, if you want to call it, in Canada. And we do the same for debt. We had about close to $1.3 trillion in debt in 2012. Of this, the mortgage debt being both, I split it up between principal residence and other real estate. Mortgage debt accounted for almost 75, just slightly more than 75% of that whole debt. And you can see that the majority of the debt is coming from the principal residence. We did a bit of the same in terms of the distribution of the debt. This graph again is showing you what percentage of family units are actually holding debt. So as I mentioned, almost 70% of all Canadian family units have a form of debt. What's interesting is the mortgages again, about 36.7% have a mortgage. Their principal residence almost 34%. You can see the credit card and installment debt that has grown over the last 3 iterations at almost 40%. So it's pretty much the number one debt holder. What I'd like to do, I guess, over the next few slides is now just basically concentrate on that, really the principal residence. As I mentioned, we had, in total, we had over $9.4 trillion in assets in the country in 2012. Of that amount, principal residence was almost 1/3 at 3.2, just over 1/3 at 3.2 trillion. This is excluding other real estate. We're looking at about 4.1 trillion or so when you include the cottages, secondary homes, other parcels of land for commercial or non-commercial use, etc. In terms of the median asset value, it gives you a similar picture, but you can see the difference in the principal residence over the years. We're now at about $300,000 in terms of median asset value held in a principal residence across the country. Looking at a provincial breakdown for the information, we're looking at, we presented the information on percentage of family units holding an asset. This particular graph is just demonstrating that percentage of family units that are actually owning a home. According to the SFS in 2012, the highest ownership was in New Brunswick at over 70%. They were the only province that actually registered an ownership rate over 70%. The lowest being in Quebec. They were closer to 57, 58%. In terms of the asset value, now this is of the total $3.2 trillion that we actually have in principal residence assets in the country. It's not a surprise. Ontario accounts for the largest portion. They're in the area of almost $1.4 trillion, almost 42% of the total. This was followed by British Columbia and Alberta. Now, one of the interesting notes out of this particular graph is that it, across all provinces, being first, second, third, on obviously population-based, you'll notice that from 1999 to 2012, all provinces have doubled, and then some more than doubled in terms of the value of assets over that time period. And again, our apologies, we have to limit this to the 99, 2012, because some of the information just isn't available at provincial level due to that small sample size in 2005. You see a different picture when you're looking at the median asset value across the provinces. Now you're basically looking at British Columbia as being, I guess you can call it the median asset value richest. They registered a median asset value for principal residents at $430,000. Then that was basically, followed by Alberta and Ontario. Alberta and Ontario were between 350, 340 in terms of median. These were all significant increases as well from 1999, not quite double like the asset value itself, but there were pretty significant increases in the medians. We have information by age groupings as well. In terms of the total, again, this is all based on that principal residence, 3.2 trillion. You can see that the age grouping, those between 45 and 54 years of age, held the most in terms of asset. We're looking at about $800 billion. Fairly, evenly distributed among the other age groups, with the exception of those under 35 years. And then, of course, the medians. So by age group, once again, we're looking at median asset values, again, the highest between 35 and the 54 age groups. But this one here is fairly stable across all groups. Moving over to the actual mortgages, now we're looking at about, again, in total, it was 1.3 trillion in the country. We're looking at almost just over $1 trillion in mortgage debt in 2012. Over 80% of it, or almost 80% actually, coming from the principal residence. In terms of median mortgage value, between principal residence and other real estate, you don't see much of a difference. But countrywide, you're looking at a median mortgage of about $145,000. Again, a significant increase. You can see a much bigger increase from the 2005 to the 2012 period in this one. You don't notice that much of an increase from 99 to 2005, but it's showing you in line, and it lines up with the value of the home. In terms of mortgage value by province, again, no surprise coming out of Ontario. The majority of the residents, you're basically looking at almost $350 billion in mortgage. Again, followed similar pattern British Columbia and Alberta. And then on the median front, once again, you're looking at the same story. British Columbia and Alberta, followed by Ontario. Now, the lowest mortgage values are in PEI and New Brunswick. So in about 7 or 8 years, that's probably where I'll retire to. And again, we've got the same mortgage value information by age groupings. So in terms of the total asset value, you're looking at, this is the median mortgage value. You're looking at the median decreasing over time as we age. And this is more than likely accountable to the fact that we were able to pay down our mortgage over the years. It's not quite at zero, but it's there. Another form of, or another way we can present the data as well is by net worth quintiles. This was just an added graph. We do split the complete net worth of our Canadian family units into 5 equal parts, and then call those quintiles. We will then look at medians and totals and do some quintile information, more based on the distribution of wealth. And as you can see, that the majority of or the higher median asset values of principal residents are actually falling in the 4th and the 5th quintile, as expected. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, we released the data in February of 2014. We have some tables that are available. This information I presented today is really just a small portion of the type of information that you can take from the survey. You can do a lot of cross tabulations with the age cohorts by province. You can do a lot of cross tabulation with the net worth variable itself. There have been a lot of analyses done already over the last year and a half. We have all our information available in our data research centers across Canada, and we have our federal research data center here. The SFS data has also been released via the public use microdata files. So all 3 iterations are available in the pumps. The pumps are free of charge. They can be, I guess, not purchased, but obtained through our division over in Income Statistics Division of Statistics Canada. We've also are also participating in the new initiative, which is the real-time remote access at Statistics Canada. Researchers, governments, they can actually pay a fee, and they can actually produce their own programming code for particular data that they want produced, and they can submit it to us. We will run those programs for them. We will return the outputs to them depending on the type of analyses or work that they're doing. And we also have an Insights on Canadian Society publication that we have already released a few papers on. One of them was particular changes in wealth across the income distribution. So what we did there is we looked at all the different types of relationships between income and wealth. We broke down the income distributions by different types of income ranges and produced information on all assets and all types of debts. The second paper was changes in the debt and assets of Canadian families. That looked a little bit more in terms of the indebtedness issue, and specifically asset to debt ratios, asset to income ratios, and so on. Okay, so where are we today? Well, moving forward, I'm happy to say that the measurement of wealth of Canadian families, financial security of Canadian families, it has been and always will continue to be of a major priority with our governments, both the previous and the current government. Back in the 2015 budget announcement, we were mentioned for approval for a continued ongoing triennial survey of financial security. I'm happy to say that we are working, we're almost there. We're working very, very closely with Treasury Board. We have received approval of certain aspects. We're there now. We're presenting next month, but everything is looking like we're going to be getting a green light in terms of the funding. The project itself will be starting for the 2016 reference year. We have begun consultations on that already. We have begun looking at new content. And again, all of this was just really to fill that major data gap, which is a measurement of net worth and wealth of Canadians. Just very briefly in terms of the plan and where we're at today and where we're going over the next few years. As I mentioned, we started the work. We have committed to 20,000 dwellings again in terms of our survey sample. Similar to 2012, we want to continue to be able to compare our information across the provinces at provincial levels. We want to be able to release family type, dwelling type, age groupings, income groupings, wealth groupings, and so on. It's rich information that we need to continue to build that time series. We have had consultations with our stakeholders, both internal and external. We didn't have a lot of time to do this, but we have done it. We are preparing reports on the consultation. Right now, we basically are pretty much almost at the stage of finalizing our questionnaire and development of the questionnaire and testing of the questionnaire for the 2016 cycle. In year 2, you're looking at the collection of the data. We're scheduled to be out in the field, again, using the regional office interviewer staff. We're looking at September 1st to December 2nd, 2016 collection. Processing and imputation of data will take place in second year, and then year 3 when the fund begins, and that'll be our estimation and our analysis again. Our plans to date are to release the 2016 Survey of Financial Security data in December of 2017. And just, I guess, worth mentioning, some of the results from the consultation, there has been a common, strong interest in collecting additional financial information about housing. What we're hoping to do, and we have proposed this, we're building up our housing module. We have tested, we haven't received all the complete results yet of the testing, but we are hoping to build the housing module to include items such as mortgages, interest rates, the term of the actual mortgage, what sources of funding were used for a down payment. Was it money on hand, money you borrowed from mom and dad, and refinancing, anything in terms of the refinancing of your home. So for reasons for, have you, yes, no. So those are the new type of data variables and information that we would like to gather for the next round. Okay. Well, I thank you very much. I hope it gave you an idea or a little bit of a flavor of the type of information the survey has to offer. Again, we can go on all day. If I knew that everyone else was going to be a little bit quicker, I would have probably presented 40 more slides, but that's okay. Okay, any questions? I'd be more than happy to try and answer them.
Thanks, John. Any comments or questions for John? Yes, Matthew.
You had the one slide that looked at assets by quintile. What does net worth look like by quintile? And did you ever look at the quintiles by age demographic?
Yes, actually we do. We have the quintile information on our StatCan website right now. The information is basically, as I mentioned, we're splitting all the net worth values of all family units into 5 equal parts. I can't give you the exact numbers off the top of my head. They're looking very similar to what the housing numbers are looking at. The exception is that you're adding a lot of pension assets in there now. You'll see that the fifth the fifth quintile is definitely up there in terms of value, simply because now you're adding the RPPs, you're adding the RSPs, and there's home ownership in there as well. The CANSOM table, which is 2050003, it has actually I believe it has information by quintile, yeah, and you can get it also cross-tabbing by age grouping, and we have that information available. So, my apologies.
John, just a quick question. Asset valuation, what methodology do you use to value real estate properties or pension plans?
Okay. The pension is a little bit more complicated, but it's a very fascinating topic, and I love the stuff. But the asset is pretty straightforward. We come to your home. We ask you what your mortgage is on your home, what you got owing. In terms of the value of the home, we ask you for the fair market value if you were able to sell that home today. So it's really almost a best guess, but it's a pretty good guess. We do a lot of data certification at Statistics Canada. We validate. We use a lot of internal sources and external sources. I'll give you some examples. We have information from the census NHSs that we compared to in terms of value. They come up within about 2%. We also have property tax values that we receive from one of the other divisions, Statistics Canada. Again, that's all property tax assessments based on residential buildings, homes. Again, they had a 2012 number in the area of about $4.1 trillion in value. The SFS shows up at 4.2 trillion in value. So we're very, very close. It's not an actual municipality property assessment file that we would receive. We do get them. We do our best to try and do some cross analysis on those. We come up fairly accurate. We're very confident in that process. In my mind, I guess I know what my house is worth today, and I know what I'm going to get for it. But it is a bit subjective at times, and we do keep that into consideration as well. Okay. Yes, Ian.
Sorry, I'm just going to go back. Sorry, Matthew, you had a follow-up question about the... You sure? Sure. Okay. John.
John Dickey, the Canadian Federation of Apartment Associations. Could you go back to slide 25? It's the same one Matthew was talking about, but I had a different question. Yes, that one. Thank you. So I'm wanting I wonder if you could talk us through that slide. The thing I'm having a little trouble understanding is principal residence is is that the value of the principal residence?
Exactly. What I've done is we've tried to break down the information in terms of the highest, the 5 quintiles in terms of net worth. So this is basically telling you that in the 5th and highest net worth category, regardless of what that net worth value is, the median asset value of the principal residence is $430,000.
All right. Now, it's well known, I think, that renters usually have a lower asset value and significantly lower income than homeowners. And I'm curious that the principal residence value shown in the lowest quintile and the second lowest quintile would be as high as that. That is shocking to me. Is there an explanation for that? Is that the median value of those in that quintile who own a principal residence?
Correct.
Okay. So if we were to take everyone in that quintile, we'd have a much lower number.
Correct.
Okay.
But it's the medians. So you will still get in that quintile. You still get your renters and your zero, and your $50,000 values and your $60,000 value homes. You'll still get those types of numbers. But that 175 is the median within that net worth quintile. And the net worth quintile, again, is established or it's created based on the net worth, the total net worth, not the net worth of principal residence, not the net worth of vehicles or pensions. It's the actual net worth.
All right. And somewhere else in CanSim is the data that would count everyone, I'm supposing.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Now, you can look at it a way, if I presented that in terms of income brackets,
Yes.
then you'll see the income $0 to $50,000, and you'll see a pretty significant median in terms of principal residence, because you will have individuals that are retired, that are not working, that don't have income, but have a very, very high median in terms of their principal residence or their home. Okay.
Yes. Over their lifetime income was presumably relatively high, and they bought a house commensurate with that. Yeah. And now they're sitting on a house in the Glebe in Ottawa here worth $1 million.
Exactly.
Even though their income is only $50,000.
Exactly.
Right,
and we've always got to be careful when we're looking at the income distributions and the wealth distributions, because then you're getting into a topic that's a little bit more, complex and complicated, and we always have to be careful how we present that information.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
But yeah, it's there.
Okay, we'll take Ian, and then I'll go back to Matthew.
Ian Melzer, CMHC. Will it be possible to link the data from the 2016 SFS with the 2016 census?
I would love to do that. I think it's possible. When we're linking our respondents to the income tax files, we're basically linking them based on an address, a name, and then we get their social insurance number. The question would be more if how does the census link, and if we're getting an information by that key identifier on the census data, then we'll be able to. If we're basically looking at linking John Nicoletta in Orleans, Ontario, this address, whatever, and on the census, I guess it could be possible. We may not have as successful a hit rate as we do when we have a good identifier like a social insurance number or that, but could be possible. Attempt could be possible.
Like everybody here, I read the daily and tear apart all the tables and everything. And when this survey came out, I did a comparison of the net worth by quintile, rate of growth 99 to 2012. And what it showed was the only quintile to lose money, most quintiles almost doubled in their net worth, the lowest quintile lost. And then I looked at age, and through that lens, what it showed was young Canadians not only had no assets to appreciate, were basically frozen out of the market from getting any assets, and when they were getting pensions, they weren't getting good pensions. And I like to remind myself of that when we start talking about housing for seniors and how much money we should be investing in seniors and the sorts of housings that, sort of contribution we should be expecting from seniors. Because when you looked at it, net worth on that basis, the youngest Canadians had nothing and the eldest Canadians had the most.
David, did you want to go ahead?
You were before.
It's Ariel Stockdale from the Nunavut Housing Corporation. I was just wondering if there are any plans for the 2016 survey to expand to the territories at all.
No, not for the 2016. It is something that we always bring to the table, though, at the beginning of every iteration. Again, we were basically, we were under the gun. We had to start the development process. We tried to keep everything status quo because it makes our life a lot easier. But knowing now what we know in terms of ongoing, this is definitely something that, we can consider. There's always the key issue and the big issue with the North, and that's the cost and the response rates. It's not like we haven't tried in certain areas or Statistics Canada surveys. We do realize the response rates are quite low, and we do realize that it's pretty darn expensive to get someone up there in the homes to, survey them. But there are other ways that we can try to look at those, not necessarily face to face. So that is something that, I think for the 2019 and beyond, we can definitely look at.
Yeah, we're partnering with the territorial governments too.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure.
So certainly we share Matthew's point on the more ways we can look at the asset and debt situation of those in the youngest age group, the better, because that's a crucial question. It's not only a crucial question for those people themselves, but it's a crucial question for the future going ahead. I guess did I miss something on, in effect, a kind of a vulnerability relationship between the debt and the assets? I mean, have you done something on this principal residence in terms of linking it back to, I mean, it's a very current question. We got this huge growth in prices, which means translated into value, but we also have a huge growth in consumer debt. So I think the net result is, quote, positive, but could you tell me a little bit more about how you're tracking that in terms of what happens if something goes south?
Well, that is a very difficult question for us to answer because we're basically just measuring the value of the asset, and then we're taking on the mortgage. We're basically calculating the net worth, or if you want to call it the equity in the home. We're not really looking at, what would happen if prices were to drop 20%. We're still going to go out in 2016 and ask you for the value of your home and ask you for the value of your debt. What we may see is that shift downwards in terms of the equity. But there's nothing that we're, at this point in time, planning in terms of, the whys and the how comes, and more or less for us just to continue to monitor, to be able to compare year over year.
Okay, I think we'll move on. Any other questions? I think John will be around for the rest of the session, and you can always contact him at StatsCan. Thank you very much, John.